What is one or two trends that you just absolutely love that you're seeing in cybersecurity today?
Oh, that's a really difficult. One or two is hard. I think for me, honestly, I think it's like agentic AI. I think it's huge. Um, I'm such an AI fanboy for this purpose and this purpose alone. Really, it comes down to the fact that most people think about like AI as some assistant. Maybe they've had a little bit of ChatGPT usage. They're starting to understand that maybe there's some agentic stuff out there. But when you see what it can really do, when you have like chained agents working together, that it can actually investigate well, it can correlate, it can take action, and it doesn't need constant human intervention. The amount of work that it can do and can take off like a cyber defender or a security professional, it's amazing. It's really amazing.
Hello, everyone. This is Rick with the Cyber Pro podcast, where industry leaders share their insights. Today, Mr. Craig Jones, you're up, you're in the limelight, you're on the spotlight, you're on the stage. So, first question: who are you and why are you awesome?
Um, well, thanks for having me, first of all. Yeah, my name's Craig Jones, and I'm the Chief Security Officer here at Ontinue. Ontinue is an MXDR provider, and we specialize in Microsoft and AI, agentic AI specifically. Why am I awesome? I guess we protect a lot of people. We have hundreds of customers, and we protect them widely. And I guess that's the part that makes us good and makes us awesome.
No, I love it. Craig, I want to dig in a little bit because I know you guys, and I've known you guys for a while now, but talk to me about that relationship with Microsoft, why that's become so important and how you're offering such a cool solution around that.
Yeah, sure. So I think it really comes down to the fact that Microsoft have got some great products on the market. When it comes to the Defender suite, it's kind of untouchable. It's all enclosed. We have a great platform in Sentinel, and of course, we leverage all those really cool tools. It's it's really world class in its offering, and Microsoft are continually developing. We find it great. So I think it's a really good place to be as a provider and user of those solutions.
I love it. So we're going to start real macro, right? Pie in the sky. What is one or two trends that you just absolutely love that you're seeing in cybersecurity today?
Oh, well, that's a really difficult. One or two is hard. 7
Right?
or 8, maybe I could do that. I think for me, honestly, I think it's like agentic AI. I think it's huge. Um, I'm such an AI fanboy for this purpose and this purpose alone. Really, it comes down to the fact that most people think about like AI as some assistant. Maybe they've had a little bit of ChatGPT usage. They're starting to understand that maybe there's some agentic stuff out there. But when you see what it can really do, when you have like chained agents working together, that it can actually investigate well, it can correlate, it can take action, and it doesn't need constant human intervention. The amount of work that it can do and can take off like a cyber defender or a security professional, it's amazing. It's really amazing. I think that for me is super exciting. Um, and it's beyond my wildest dreams. I think 4 or 5 years ago, we were kind of seeing a little bit of OpenAI's, little inklings into it could kind of generate text and code, and then all of a sudden, it's unbelievably good at researching security cases. We've come on so much in like 4 or 5 years. Seeing what's going to do in a few years, I think it's gonna be even more amazing. It's gonna be incredible. So that part, I think, is super cool. That kind of AI human collaboration is awesome.
I love it. Let's dig in. Let's dig into that, right? We just talked about it. So, what is agentic AI? We have folks on here who are probably 50 bots deep on it, and we have folks on here that watch that are like, my board is telling me I have to look at this. So, what is agentic AI, and how is it transforming kind of the way we work in the world today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a super wide question, and I'm really a user of AI. I mean, we have an amazing AI team here of like, incredible boffins who put this stuff together. But effectively, agentic AI comes down to training AI to do different tasks. So we'll have one AI agent, I guess, and that will do some initial research. The second AI agent will evaluate it. A third AI agent might look at that against some of our kind of known attributes that maybe happened before, entities that have been seen before. And then a fourth AI agent will actually start to compile this. Another one will look at what's missing and evaluate that. So you end up with a pile of different AI agents acting as kind of humans, just like humans would, I guess. And then the end result is you end up with a kind of work package that looks as though it's been dealt with by maybe up to 50 humans. It's such a game changer when it comes to, really investigating things well and doing things to the nth degree. The kind of manpower that we could never do is suddenly done, and it's super easy. It's incredible.
I love it. And how is Ontinue wrapping that into your MXDR offering?
Yeah, so I think it's one of the things that makes us really unique is we have this built into our product. So our cyber defenders see this agentic AI output, and it's actually live in all of our detections. So everything that flows through our platform is enriched by this. Um, it's also aware of things that have happened previously. So, for example, if something keeps popping up in a customer environment, we know that they've got a particular piece of software from China that's maybe for dealing with tax or something. We won't, um, we won't detect on it again because the agentic AI knows that we've actually dealt with that. We know what it is. We know the root cause. Therefore, it understands the output and it can evaluate as such. So for us, it's there, it's part of our everyday lives there. It's super cool.
No, that's awesome. So let's pivot just a little bit, right? We know that security professionals need to optimize their tools, and we're hearing a lot about artificial intelligence and Gen AI, and we're starting to really see this resurgence around automation. But what does that mean, and how is it really evolving into the threat landscape that we're seeing in cyber today?
Yeah, I think it comes down to two things. I mean, when we talk about automation, we talk about like our agentic AI aspect, and then we talk about our deterministic automation. So, for example, things that might enrich an alert, add some details to an IP address or something like that. It's deterministic. And I think what we end up with is this twofold system of, you know, these things that we understand and we can enrich easily, we'll enrich with standard automation systems because it's super easy, quick, cheap, fast, it's good. And then we use AI then to wrap up what the deterministic automation is actually output. So when you come down to people looking to automate, I think it's a twofold piece. We look at doing our kind of traditional automation, and then we look at, how can we leverage AI to make it that much better.
So let's take that into a security operations center. They really want to drive automation, right? I mean, one human can't see 10,000 alerts. But what is the difference kind of between just making alert rules and actually automating using MTTR or other risk automations?
That's a good question. I think it comes down to a couple of things, right? So when we talk about building rules, one of the things we like to do is really be smart about the rules we're enabling. Like a lot of people think more detections is better. Actually, no. I mean, what all we want to do is have really good detections, ones that only really fire when something bad is happening. If you've got something that's firing 100 times a day, what's going to happen is SOC defenders or security professionals are going to start ignoring it. Or, if it fires 99 times and only one time out of the 99 is actually, or 100 rather, is actually, a true positive, well, that's going to be lost. Um, so, we want to make sure that it's consistent. We want to make sure that everything that we're detecting on is actually good, and every detection actually counts. When you think about it from a human time perspective, a detection's expensive. It takes a little bit of brain power to work through. There's a context switch between different detections and alerts, and I think it's important to just detect on things that are, that are probably likely something bad going on.
So let's dig in a little bit. We were talking about optimization, kind of figuring things out, but we're also seeing a lot of tool sprawl. So here's your chance to stand on a pulpit. If you had to cut your stack by 30%, or you told a customer, hey, you got to cut by 30%, what stays and what goes?
Oh, this is such a challenging question. I love it. I mean, I honestly, I think it comes down to, you need to think about what you've got as an investment. You know, um, there seems to be a real push towards people thinking about a strategy being this collection of tools. The tool collection, the tool sprawl is the strategy. And very often we find that people have bought maybe multiple tools to do the same thing and they haven't really realized it. So for example, we find that people have maybe bought an email solution, but they've also got E5. So they already have like email filtering. I think for me, I would probably just kind of cut back to basics and look at what base security I can do within, especially in the Microsoft stack, within the license you've already purchased before actually looking to purchase more solutions. Um, and we find this a lot. We have a program called the Security Posture Improvement Program. We run all of our customers through it, and it's basically to help them evaluate, well, where is that particular detection piece coming from? Where is their security being driven from? Is there anything we can do to maybe harden things a little bit? With the existing tool set that they have. I've been in so many organizations in the past where the solution is just to drop another $500,000 on something else. And very often these things are like bought and then they're never actually implemented properly. I think I've heard of so many kind of half installed security tools. And I'm sure many people listening today will be like, oh yeah, I'd remember that one install of whatever. Yeah, we probably need to fix that or finish it off or whatever. But it happens everywhere.
No, and I'm actually hearing today a lot of folks have gone out and bought a data loss prevention tool, a DLP tool specifically, right? A platform, a software, and it's going to fix the world of data loss prevention. And they start to implement it, and all of a sudden they realize that 90% of what they just purchased, they could do, whether it was through their Microsoft E5s, whether it was through various other tools around their email security or their SD-WAN. And so how are you guys kind of rectifying that situation with a customer saying, "Hey, let's look at what you have today. Let's be holistic, but let's make sure before you go and just wrap $500,000 to another tool that you've really understand what you're buying."
It's a solid question. In reality, we're just giving advice. We're helping them evaluate what they've got. Taking a step back. I mean, you mentioned DLP. I think that's a classic tool set of people buy it, they turn on a policy, and it doesn't do what they want, and they're like, well, what do we do now? And it really needs a lot of skill to implement. I mean, we're working with a lot of customers to implement Microsoft's version, which is Purview. But in reality, it's all about understanding why you're purchasing it, what the end result is, and we can help work that out. Um, I've certainly seen the past though with other tooling where we kind of touched on the kind of $500,000 spend. It can sometimes be way more, and sometimes things are never actually taken out the box. Um, and I think my advice to that is just to make sure that before you purchase anything, you really understand why. You know, you understand why and what the end result is, the goal for that thing. There's some great tools on the market. There's also some that just aren't needed, and it really depends on your aim and your business.
And I tell a lot of folks that I consult with, take a breath. It shouldn't be emotional. And then go back and make the decision based upon risk. What is
Mhm.
your risk appetite? Because if you have a low risk appetite, sometimes more tools is actually a bad choice. And I think people forget that that risk-based management style is arguably better than just saying we're mature by having all these tools. Is that something you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I would say that's very much true. I mean, I think the best strategies just they're not tool shopping lists. They are something that you really think end to end what the risk profile is about it. That's about the clarity within the organization. What are we protecting? Who owns the risk? Like, how fast can we detect something? And I think we help them answer a lot of those questions, and we do it without kind of overwhelming. But back to your point, I think it's really about having a clear strategy and understanding what you're protecting and thinking about, well, what is my crown jewels? What's the data I'm actually protecting? Like, what are the rules that I've got to sit against? Who are the bodies I've got to adhere to? What are the laws I've got? And then kind of work back from there. Well, actually, these are the things I should do?
No, I love it. So this is kind of a fun question for me because it really allows you to think about your customer base and what Ontinue does for those customers. I've seen some really cool case stories. And so share with us a story that really just resonates with you about how Ontinue has really supported a customer's cyber posture in a meaningful way.
Yeah, sure. So we have a lot of NGO customers, and I love the work that they do. You know, there's huge NGOs that do incredible work globally, and we support a large portion of them. And for me, I think some of the best stories we've got is finding like new APTs and things like that affecting them. Having brand new malware, that we find through a threat hunt, and we get to take that apart, dissect it, and it's something that hasn't been seen before. And that to me is super exciting. When it's a new technique, it's an, it's a new way into the environment. Maybe got a different tool or tactic built into it, and that stuff really is the part that really gives me energy, I guess. And it's a big piece of what we do. And as far as stories go, I think that's one of my favorite. Really, I probably got a million stories I could reel off in reality, but that one's super cool. And we sometimes write about it in our blog too, but these ones are the ones that are the most interesting.
Yeah, and I've seen your blog, I've seen some of your stories. It's pretty cool, but I appreciate you leaning in on the nonprofit, on the NGO side, right? I'm actually on the board of 4 different NGOs right now, which is probably a little aggressive, but I did it because I am just about done with my PhD in cyber psychology focused on burnout. And I find the more I can give back to the cyber community, the more I can give back to these nonprofits who are doing these really cool things, it just really makes me feel better. I know that you're passionate about cyber burnout as well. So I'd be curious to pick your brain, kind of what insights or experience can you share on how to prevent someone from reaching that burnout stage?
Hey, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we're big into preventing burnout here, and I've talked a lot about it. Actually, I've had several different talks globally in different conferences talking about this. Um, there's several things. I guess it depends on which level you're at. There's a big difference in burnout from say a CISO to say a SOC analyst. And I think I've seen every level of it. Like I think very often CISOs end up in a situation where it's difficult to communicate the risk in the organization. They're not getting traction. There's minimal budget, and then they find that that everything kind of comes back to them, and then burnout happens really quickly. You know, and that's like a trope and a path that I see fairly often. That I've seen in the past in my career. Kind of coming down to the other end, though, SOC analysts. I mean, there are many organizations that we've onboarded, and they've had tens of thousands of alerts, and SOC analysts are almost utterly burnt out. And I think and it's just such a standard story. But you know, we take a different approach, and internally too. I mean, considering we have hundreds of customers, our team we really think about like our shift patterns. We make sure that the guys are only working for set periods a day. The human mind is just not set up to look at this, look at tickets like constantly, or do the same repetitive task constantly. So we have to work around that. And what we generally do is we split shifts. We do things like, have people working other tasks. So, you can move into, say, threat hunting. There's periods where, some of our guys will work on threat detection, and other things internally too. If we're working towards, say, some sort of certification, we'll move some of our SOC team members to work on that as well. So it's really about rotating tasks too. I think doing the same thing over and over sometimes. I know it's the definition of madness. I get it, but in reality, it's it does get difficult and tedious, and then I think burnout comes from that as well. I think it's a big driver towards burnout, especially in in junior careers.
I get to fanboy a little bit with you on this because I actually have cited one of your presentations that I watched in my PhD. I have also cited Ontinue's approach to organizational security operations center management around the way you guys rotate. And so that was one of the three areas that I said we needed to focus on in my final research, right? When I completed the research, I identified that rotating security roles is a key one. Second is that the actual organization takes some control of the structure, right? They actually take some onus that they are part of the problem. It's not just an independent coping mechanism. And then the third is where I'm leaning in is really on mental resiliency training as part of your job function. And so I love that you guys are doing this. I'm super excited that we guys kind of have this little mini back and forth about burnout and what this looks like. So thank you for sharing and thank you guys for taking care of our cybersecurity professionals. So now let's dig in. We're getting close to the what we call kind of the quicks, right? The rapid fires. This first one, we could take a little more than 30 seconds if you like, but three metrics that actually matter to the board of directors when it comes to cyber resilience. And how can you prove them?
Oh boy, 3 metrics. I think for me, it's probably quantity of incidents is probably an interesting metric. The other one is the mean time to closure, so that's pretty useful. Um, I think probably one of the biggest metrics, though, is I would say is staff turnover. Are you retaining your security staff? I think that's a really good, you know, um, slow metric around how well your organization is performing. Um, like one of the things I am super proud of here is we have a 98% retention rate in our SOC, which is unheard of, really. But again, I think it's a great indicator on how well something is doing. And I'd implore
Love,
that for any security organization.
I love it. I love the human factor that you're taking in on this. Now we get to go to the 30-second rapid fires, although I think we hit that with the last one too, so you're killing it. So, all right, what's the fastest way to cut alert fatigue?
Reduce alerts, I think, is the fastest way. Yeah. Really decide who's they're going to keep. Yeah.
Get right. That's great. How do you reduce alerts?
Well, I guess it's really deciding what you want to keep. What is actually important to you? What is a real alert for you? I see so many things firing in an organization when in reality it's not actually a risk for them. Like what's the point in triaging that? You're better off putting your time into something that actually does mean something.
I love it. Name one automation or playbook that every SOC should implement immediately.
I mean, obviously, it's a phishing playbook, you know. I think that's the first one. I think that's probably one of the most tedious things that any SOC has to deal with is maybe user-reported phishing. Um, Something that's maybe more interesting, though, is detections based off of, a playbook that maybe fires based off of domain names that are similar to yours. So, maybe have a Shannon algorithm that detects against maybe a domain name that's similar to yours that can very often, especially if your target organization, be a good indicator if you're, in the sights of an APT or something. So that's a pretty good quick playbook that can give you a heads up on something that's, might be nefarious.
I love it. That's a great way to do it. Let's flip it. What's a pitfall to avoid when a SOC is creating automations?
Ooh, that's a big one. I think probably like a standard pitfall is like you need to think about how much effort you're putting into automating something. There's no point putting 6 days into automating something that only occurs once a month. I've kind of seen it from both sides. I think we go a little too heavy sometimes in automation, and you've got to realize, oh, actually, what's my return on investment for it? So I think that'd be my answer.
What is a red flag signal that your team is heading towards cyber burnout?
Honestly, I think one of the first indicators is just the lack of collaboration. When you see the team goes quiet, you can tell they just don't want to do any more with each other. And I think that to me is a solid indicator that things are awry, you know.
How can you fix that?
I think it's really about understanding load. And when it's very simple in a SOC, we think about tickets, think about the time it takes to triage an average ticket, and then we can extrapolate that and work out exactly how much time. It's about making sure that we have a little downtime. we are actually changing jobs and or at least giving experiences outside of, standard work. Um, those are aspects that really help. Also, as well, in-person meetups. Like so many SOC people work remote. I mean, we're primarily remote, but we get together several times a year. And I think that in person actually makes a huge difference of just kind of lifting overall spirits, doing in-person collaboration. Um, it's a big boost, and I think it goes a long way to actually stopping and preventing burnout.
All right, finish this sentence. The SOC of 2026 will be blank because of blank.
I think the SOC of 26 will be awesome because of agentic AI.
I love it. You brought it all right back around. So, Craig, why do you love being a cyber professional and why should other people get into cyber?
That's a great question. Honestly, I find it just super satisfying. When we see a customer or, an organization that really needs help and, you kind of turn them around, you see them work through an incident, you watch their maturity get much higher, you're there protecting this. I think there's a huge amount of satisfaction from that. And I think it's rare in many different workplaces to get satisfaction that's instant on that level. And plus, as well, we've also got the aspect of, we're working against real attackers. There's bad guys out there. This is traditional cops and robbers, but with keyboards. It's it's cool. And I think that's a long way to it. It's a great profession to be in.
I love it. Craig, thank you so much for being on the Cyber Pro podcast.
No, no worries. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.